Hello, welcome to this week's edition of Drupal Chat. And today I'm going to be talking to you about attending your first DrupalCon. As I would imagine, you may know if you're watching this now or sometime soon, DrupalCon New Orleans is 1 week from today. Well, I guess it officially starts on Tuesday, but there are many activities that will be on Monday, May 9th. And it goes, again, officially through Thursday. Tuesday through Thursday is officially. Friday, they've got sprints. And Saturday, they've got extended sprints. And with Monday, there's the training and the different summits that a person can go to. So I'm going to talk about some of those things today. And so just for starters, my name is Mark Isaacson. Thanks for checking out the show. You can find me on Drupal.org as Vegan Triathlete. And so the first Drupal conference that I attended was in Denver, because I live in Colorado, and I didn't see that I could very well not go to a Drupal conference when there was one about 15 or 20 minutes from where I live. And once I made it to that first Drupal conference, I was pretty much hooked. I thought, yeah, I need to keep on doing this. So I'm going to tell you about how I approached my first Drupal conference. And my idea was that I wanted to pack my schedule full. With every slot where there was session, I was going to make sure to go to one of those sessions. And I wanted to make sure I treated it as though I was going to the conference to get Drupal training from people. And so I really heavily loaded up my time there with the different sessions that were being offered. And because it was in my hometown, I actually did come home each night. And so I didn't really participate in any of the activities, any of the social type of activities, the parties or anything outside of the regular schedule. At that time, actually, my son was only a few months old. He was born in 2012. And so I really felt that I needed to get back in the evenings to help out my wife. So that year, what things looked like for me, as I mentioned, pretty much were geared towards training and technical type of stuff. So that's pretty much what I did. And I'm going to tell you that that was not a really great way to do a first Drupal conference. In fact, I would say it's probably not really a great way to do any Drupal conference, whether you've been there already or not. But the reason I'm doing this chat, the attending your first DrupalCon, is that we all have our first time and we might not know how to approach things. Once we've attended our first Drupal conference, we get a better idea maybe of how we like to do things the next time. And so that's why I'm not calling the chat just in general attending Drupal conferences. This is for people who haven't yet attended one. So I'd like to get into my suggestions of how, these are my recommendations of how to think about a Drupal conference and what you can get. I don't want to say what you should get in terms of like trying to tell you what to do, but what you should get out of a Drupal conference. So first of all, the sessions, the regularly scheduled sessions at Drupal conferences are recorded and they are available via YouTube. The Drupal Association will post all of those recordings on YouTube. So you really don't need to go to any of the sessions because you can watch them later on. I would say the only, maybe a couple of reasons that you would choose to attend sessions. And Of course, the people giving the sessions, they don't really want people giving advice saying, don't go to any of the sessions, because then for the people giving the sessions, that would be kind of a bummer. They would be speaking to an empty room. So I'm not saying like literally nobody should go to any sessions. So let me give you a couple of reasons why you might choose to go to a particular session. One really strong reason to choose to go to a session is if you have some questions that you would like to be able to ask the person who's presenting that session, so you can get that opportunity to have that person answer your question for you. So that's a really strong reason to go to a session, is that you have questions that you'd like to have answered. And obviously, if you don't attend, you don't get to ask them and you don't get the questions answered. Another reason to consider, that you might go to a session is that this is something that you really do want to know right now, and you don't want to have the potential situation that you say, oh, I'll watch it later on, and then maybe you're busy once you get back from the conference and you don't actually take the time to have a look at it. So there may be some of those sessions where you say, no, I really, really want to make sure that I do see this session, because I may not take advantage of seeing it on YouTube later on. And so those would be the two main reasons that I would say to go to a session. Now, other people might throw in reasons such as like, well, because my friend, or somebody, I respect this person in the community, and I want to make sure that they have some people sitting in the audience, and so I'm going to go attend that session because I want this presenter to have people in the seats, and that's perfectly fine as well. These are all types of reasons that I would say are good for choosing to actually attend a session. Now, to wrap up my thoughts about attending sessions, if you have never attended a conference before, and especially if you've never attended a Drupal camp before, I think that it is important for you to understand if you have the expectation that you're going to go to sessions because you want to be trained on how to do something, just recognize that the people giving the sessions we're all volunteers. Like, we're not paid professional speakers. And some people maybe are not as good presenters as others. Some people maybe have never taught classes before. So just understand going into the session that it may not be quite the same thing as if you've gone to a class, whether it's a paid class or a free class, that you may be dealing with somebody who potentially won't have the greatest organizational or presentational skills. And it's hard to know exactly what you're going to get, right? Like Forrest Gump says, life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. Okay, so you really don't know. And with this being your first time attending, it's hard for you to know which people are typically good speakers. And I mean, to be blunt about it, I mean, I've been to a number of cons right now, and I've been to different presentations where I've come to learn that some people just are not good speakers, honestly. And that can be somewhat to my chagrin, because it sometimes baffles me somewhat. Why do these people get to keep presenting at conferences year after year? But such is life. That's the way it goes. To each his own, right? So anyway, that's about the session. So just have a reasonable set of expectations, and really think about what you're going to get out of attending the session in person. So if I'm not pushing attending the sessions, then what would I push attending? And what I'm going to tell you should be something that should be the first consideration that you have, is the birds of a feather breakouts, let's call them. So I'm not calling them sessions. I don't call everything sessions. So have a look through the birds of a feather schedule to see what appeals to you. Because to the best of my knowledge, I do not believe that the birds of a feather are recorded at this point. I think it may be something that might have been tested or might have been considered, but I don't think it's actually been officially implemented, certainly not on a wide scale at this point. So if you don't attend a Birds of a Feather, you don't get to find out what happened at the Birds of a Feather. And so that is one reason that I highly recommend having a look through the schedule of, they're called BOFs. So it's just going to be easier for me to say that. And that's how people refer to them at the conference as well. So just get that in your head. Birds of a Feather are commonly referred to as BOFs. And so one reason that I'm highly recommending that you attend BOFs, that the bulk, if not 100% of what you do at the conference is to go to the BOFs, is that if you aren't there, then you don't get to see what went on there. Another reason that I would highly recommend that is that it gives you an opportunity to really interact more directly with people. When you go to a session, they're generally bigger rooms, and it is pretty typical that sessions do have a pretty good number of attendees. So you don't get that same kind of direct interaction. Now, having said that, there are certain BOFs that do end up becoming quite popular. And so I would temper my advice about attending a BOF with that caveat as well, saying, and try to find a BOF that obviously interests you, but isn't going to be too popular, isn't going to be so crowded, because then, again, you put yourself in that situation that you don't really have that opportunity to interact directly with people. Now, you may decide that the topic that is being discussed is interesting enough and important enough to you that you don't really care whether you get the one-on-one interaction, but you're there more so because you know you're not going to be able to find out what happened in that BOF later on. And that's fair enough to let that be the overriding factor, that, wow, this is something that, like, I really, really want to know about, and I'm not going to get a chance to see it if I don't go, and so I'm going, even if it ends up being really crowded. Now, one of the reasons that I'm suggesting that you look for a BOF that's going to be not quite as packed with people is to have that opportunity to really, everybody gets a chance to talk and interact with each other and kind of share their opinions and teach and learn from each other. And there's more of that social aspect to it. And so that's another point that I want to bring up about when you're at the conference. One of the big benefits of attending the Drupal conference is that opportunity to see people face to face and build some relationships and to do some socializing or networking. And so there's also the exhibition hall that you can go to, and that gives you a place where you can meet with people face to face. Maybe some of the people who've got the booths there, it's worthwhile allocating some time to go talk to people in the booths, because you'll get a chance to learn more about who they are, what they do. And it depends. Like, for example, one of the, I don't know whether it's really a booth or a table, but there will be the mentoring table that's there. And that could be a great opportunity for you to get a chance to talk to the people who are going to be helping out with the mentoring, so you can find out what's going on Friday and Saturday. And I'll come back to Friday and Saturday in a little bit here. So do think about spending some time in the exhibit hall. I'm assuming this year that they're going to have some area where there are games. They typically have that in the exhibit hall, well, whether they're ping pong tables or pool tables or pinball machines or some type of things like that. So there is generally an area where people can just socialize in the exhibit hall. So there'll be the vendors in there, and then there will be people potentially just kind of hanging out to talk with each other. And it's definitely worthwhile checking that out. Now, speaking of the social hall, I will talk to you, exhibit hall. I'll talk to you a bit more about that. I've been like a real t-shirt fiend, like no good reason for it, just some crazy type of thing for me being determined to see how many t-shirts I could snag when I'm at the conference. And I'm just going to admit that, like, that's not really the way that I want to approach it this year. I'm not going to the conference to collect a bunch of t-shirts. And particularly, I'm going to look more so towards the t-shirts that I'm even interested in are the ones that aren't just, blatant advertising for that particular vendor. Like, let's at least make sure that they've got something that had some reference to Drupal and hopefully DrupalCon New Orleans on it, so that it's kind of a more fun t-shirt to wear as opposed to just walking around as a billboard for these companies. So, that's a way that I'll kind of, manage my time a little bit better this year, is to, instead of having some of it eaten up by just trying to run around from booth to booth, getting t-shirts, choose t-shirt, choose booths, if I'm going to be trying to snag t-shirts that, got a t-shirt that to me actually seems like, oh, this would be a cool t-shirt to have. And then again, prioritizing, having some real connections and discussions with people. So again, now just speaking about the socializing aspect of it, do keep in mind that I don't know if there are parties every single night, but there are parties on a number of nights, and many times there's more than one party in a night, and that could be a worthwhile thing for you to consider attending. I'd have to say what I found with the parties, though, is that a lot of times they're like, they have to have some place to hold them, and where they're going to typically hold them is at a bar, and it tends to be crowded and noisy. And I'm not really fond of having to shout over the din to be heard. I end up getting a sore throat and a headache doing that, and it's really hard for me to have any type of meaningful conversation with people. So it can be fun to go to the parties, and I think some people, the bar scene is more their thing anyway. Like, they just like to go out because there's free alcohol there, and they just really are going out to party. Whereas for me, like, I'm not the least bit interested in the alcohol. Like, I'm not looking to come home with the Drupal flu after having attended the DrupalCon, because I was so hungover so much and it had so much garbage that I put into my system. So at these parties, like, it depends what kind of food they're going to have there. Sometimes there's actually something real to eat, and sometimes there's just kind of like, maybe sort of like little appetizer stuff. So what I would say, a strategy as far as the after hours type of things, the socializing, is that you might think about meeting up with some people at a party just to kind of stop by there a little bit, and then have a plan of maybe going out with them to go eat someplace else. And you'll be able to sit down and talk with them and be able to hear each other and eat some real food. So that's the socializing recommendation that I would make. And now swinging back to what, as I was mentioning about one of the tables that you might visit in the exhibit hall is the mentoring table, is that on Friday they've got the sprints and the mentored contribution, and then on Saturday the extended sprints. And this is something that I think is actually quite a lot of fun to do at the conference. Now, obviously, if your flight is out on Friday, I'm not suggesting that you change it so that you can stay later on Friday or to stay on Saturday for extended sprints. But if your flight isn't out until Saturday, and especially if it's out later in the day on Saturday, I would definitely recommend that you make your way over to the sprint and the extended sprint, because that really gives you a chance to sit down and interact with people and work on something together. And by the way, the sprints aren't only about coding. There's documentation sprint as well. So even if you are not interested in getting into the technical side of things, you could still participate in sprints with a documentation sprint. Speaking of getting involved with things, some of the, I don't know whether we should call them sessions. I don't know. It's not really like a session, I wouldn't say, although I guess that's how they would appear in the schedule, is the core conversations. And I have to admit that participating in the core conversations for me has been a little bit, I would say, like, not a great fit, let's say. Maybe just because I didn't choose the right core conversations, or maybe because I hadn't plugged into them early enough before before heading to the conference, and I didn't really have any idea of what it was that they were talking about. But core conversations do give you another opportunity to potentially have more of an interaction with people. And some core conversations are going to have more attendees, and some of them are going to have fewer attendees. So that's the overall advice that I would give about attending a Drupal conference. And so to summarize it, what I would suggest, a key thing to look to take away from attending the conference is actually getting a chance to interact with people, to have some conversations, to get to see some people face to face, and to build some relationships in the community. And all of that will be guided by your particular area of interest. And so keeping in mind what you are really interested in, I would wrap this up by saying, don't feel that you have to be doing something the entire time. If you are finding a time slot where there's no birds of a feather that interest you, if there's no session that interests you, then maybe you would just go hang out in the exhibit hall and just relax some. Maybe you would hang out in the lobby, just do some random socializing, or you may just give yourself a little bit of relaxation and downtime to say, okay, like this right now is a good time for me to re-energize myself a bit, or maybe check up on email, or call back to the office, or get some work done, something like that. So think about, before you go, what really is of interest to you and how you want to be able to prioritize the time that you spend there, so that you can really get the most benefit out of it, you can get the most enjoyment, and you can also come back from it feeling like you aren't completely exhausted and overwhelmed from the experience. So again, my name is Mark Isaacson. I'm vegan triathlete. I am going to be at the conference, and if you happen to see me there, it would be wonderful for you to come on by and introduce yourself and say hello and let me know that you've seen me on the Drupal chats that I'm doing. That would be a lovely bit of feedback for me to get from people, to know that there's somebody actually out there who has been able to benefit from the chats that I'm putting on. So with that, I will say ta-ta for now, and I hope to see some of you in the Big Easy.